All right, it's time that we review the game that has had a titan of a presence in the board game world, and that is Gloomhaven.
That's right, from Cephalofair Games that was started out on Kickstarter and became this juggernaut, this behemoth of the board game industry. It is in front of us right now, and this is the game that was on many people's best of lists of 2017 that was not on ours because we didn't have time to play it, but we finally did this year. So we are now going to give you our actual thoughts and opinions on it. But first, as we usually do in our reviews, we'll give you a little overview of how the game works if you're not familiar with it.
Yes, this is a campaign-style game. We actually are going to try to show as little as we can. We put a few stickers on the board, but the rest aren't there, and we're trying to hide anything else so we don't give too much away.
Yeah, if you want to see nothing, then you can turn this off. You will see a few locations on the board, but we're not going to be giving away any spoilers, but this is a campaign and legacy-style game, so there are things that happen that you might want to be blind for.
Yeah, it's a very long game. It's why we couldn't do it at the end of 2000. We just didn't have the time to really...
Yes, it's a lot. There's a lot of content in here, and even as it is, we have not finished a campaign of the game. We've played several games of it, and I feel like we've still only scratched the surface. But we've done enough, we feel, to give you our thoughts on it, so you can take that as you will.
So how all game rounds usually work is you're going to probably start in the city until weird things happen, obviously. And that's when you're going to upgrade your character and whatnot. You'll be getting gold throughout the game, and you can use that to buy items. We put a little stack over there just for some of them, but that stack will grow larger as the prosperity of Gloomhaven grows. This prosperity will increase from you doing certain events or maybe finding things throughout the world, hopefully making sure that you make the city make a better city. Therefore, there are more items available.
Yeah, and that is a big part of the game is Gloomhaven itself. That's basically your hub world where you're coming back to after each mission usually. And when you're there, you can buy new items, spend that gold that you got that you're talking about. There might be some quests that are in Gloomhaven. Otherwise, you're going out into the rest of the world on this map. And that's really, this map is just a map. This board is just for your reference to add locations to and choose where to go to. The actual real gameplay is going to be done on various map tiles. We just have a few random ones right here, and it's going to look like this with these hexes on it.
But in addition, you may actually retire your character. Everyone always starts off with a little goal. You already have yours out right now. And it'll say something about, this one says killing a bunch of demons. Once you do that, your character's sort of goal and reason to explore is done. They are going to retire, in which case there is a little book you'll be opening up. Don't want to say much on that. And you'll actually pick a new character and also probably open up some classes you haven't been able to choose yet. In the beginning, you can choose from 5 or 6. I can't remember off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, it is essentially RPG style in that you're choosing a character with a specific class with their own specific card set, their own special skills. So everyone is unique in their power set, and as you play, you also gain levels in addition to trying to complete your goals. So you're getting new skills and new abilities as you go. So progression is very important. It's definitely a game that encourages you to play with the same group in a campaign, although there is the option to have people drop in and out if you need to fit your needs for your group.
But this is what a general game would look like. What's going to happen is you're trying to usually defeat a mission. Usually it's get to the end, fight a boss kind of deal, or kill all the enemies. You'll read the missions. What's interesting though is the way the game works is you have these action cards. You're going to have all of them in your hand. They're not like in deck you draw up slowly. And you're going to choose 2 of them to play. And you'll choose the top action of one, the bottom action of another, and the initiative number. It'll tell you what your turn order is and also how you're going to react.
And these are face down, so you're not really supposed to discuss too closely with each other what your plans are, other than in vague terms maybe, so that once you flip, you're going to find out what order everyone's going to go in, as well as the enemies who flip their own initiatives as well.
Right. They have their own little decks depending on the type. This says Archer, for example, but they'll tell them whether they move at all, if they have a move action, whether they attack, if they hit multiple targets. So once everyone does their actions, the cards you play at the end will go into a sort of discard pile. On your turn, you can either do a short rest or a long rest. Short rest is get these cards back and maybe and you randomly discard one, when long rest lets you choose, but it takes up your whole turn. The problem with that is the card you choose or randomly have to choose is lost forever. In essence, it's your timer.
Yeah.
You will go through the game playing two, getting them back, losing another, playing two, getting them back, losing another, until maybe you have no cards left, in which case you're out.
So you can't be luxurious about this. You can't go through like, I'll grab some loot here, I'll have some fun in this corner, play with this guy. Like you said, it is a timer, and if you're not careful, you might just run out of cards and that's it. Or even if you still have cards left, maybe you got rid of a card with a useful ability on it and you no longer have it anymore. So you have to be mindful of what you're doing.
And some of those cards are really strong, but they're one time, so they're going to get lost anyways. And
Right.
that doesn't count towards the loss for your refresh, so that could be double.
Yeah. There's flavor text before and after each campaign, so it is definitely more of a narrative focus. It is ultimately trying to kind of recreate this feeling of a role-playing game in a board game setting, I think. The whole bunch of stuff going on in this game. At its core, it is a dungeon crawler, right? I mean, that's what it is.
It's a campaign dungeon crawler.
With legacy elements. Really, it's a legacy game. It's not really elements. It is a legacy game. And it was, I think, is it still #1 on Board Game Geek, or was it not?
I assume it is.
It was way up there. It was on top of everybody's lists, of course. Everybody had great things to say about it. We're late to the party on this, so I think partly, at least I know for me, my perspective coming in maybe is a little skewed because it's like never having seen Star Wars before and finally watching it. Like, there's just so much hype behind this game, right? Everybody was talking about Gloomhaven, how incredible it is. And after first playing the game, my initial reaction was kind of, oh, that's it? It's a dungeon crawler. It's a pretty good dungeon crawler, and I think the more that we played it, and as more sessions were carried on and more layers got added, I came to really appreciate the systems in it. I do think it's certainly a well-made and expansive game. I guess the only thing I take some umbrage at with all the hype that it got was, for instance, I know I think it won Most Innovative from Board Game Geeks Awards. And that's the one thing I would say is, while it brings many elements together in a very entertaining way, I don't think innovative is a word that I would use to describe it. I feel that it does really build so much on games like Descent that I kind of felt like I had seen before, just in a much more elaborate and in-depth way. What do you think?
When we talk about our criticism, honestly, my biggest miss with this actually is the hype. I think it's like, as you said with a movie analogy, if you heard so many people say something, like, you could enjoy it still, but because it had so much hype behind it, it just didn't live up to it to me. Mm-hmm. This, to me, felt like I was playing, and not that it's bad, and I enjoy it, like someone else's campaign. I'm like, okay, I'm just playing D&D. Mm-hmm. That kind of style. It had some interesting stuff. I love the way you can stack your deck, in essence, like changing your dice faces. The character retiring system, I think, is really cool. And of course, I love upgrading your own hub city. I mean, you always know I talk always about that. Mm-hmm. And I do love the fact that I have had a couple that fall apart, but I think that's my own issue, that it's not everything's a mini, which God knows how expensive this would be if everything was.
Yeah, the components are really nice. It's simple, but the art is cool. It's nothing like really weird or crazy, but it works.
Right, and I think it does the job of just a campaign. It's just a campaign in a fantasy setting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the big things, like we were talking about, how as an RPG, and I think probably one of my biggest marks against the game is that the story just isn't that. Not even just that it's not that good, I don't even think the game really focuses on it too much. It's certainly not on the level of a game like Mice and Mystics, for example, or it's more in line with Descent, I guess, where it really just feels like the story is there to get you to your next combat session. There wasn't any time, even though I liked my character, I didn't come back to this like, oh, I can't wait to find out what happens to this person from the city. It was just sort of an ancillary thing that was kind of fun to add to it.
Well, the big challenge is, like I said, I compared it to a D&D session. Mm-hmm. But like when we played our D&D, it has, first of all, another big problem is just getting people to the table. That's so hard with all these. I'm almost sick of legacy games because of that. Because at least the one shot, you'd be like, well, at least I can do this with different people. But what happens what I like when we play our D&D campaigns is when you've written in things that are like, oh, well, guess what? Your parent actually was here before you or something, so there's a connection with your character there. But you can't do that as much here because obviously this is just meant to be the scoundrel person and
They don't know who you're going to pick.
Right.
So they can't tailor it to your character.
as much, which I feel like it's like a little bit of a
Yeah.
But one of the problems is that with the D&D, how many hours did you put in prepping for a campaign when this is just like
Right.
out of the box?
And I think you just hit the nail on the head right there, is that for people who don't play role-playing games for whatever reason, either hard for the group, they don't have the time to be a GM, or maybe they just don't really like that style of play, they don't really like the narrative role-playing parts, this does really capture what's fun about that in a way that, like you said, it's all pre-built for you. You don't have to do anything. Just read the book, set it up, you're good to go, which is a big bonus.
Granted, like any game in a box that big, setup will take about 30 minutes.
Yeah, I shouldn't say you don't have to do anything. You got to do something. I do think that the system for action selection is cool. We've seen it before in games where you kind of cycle through sections of your entire hand rather than drawing from a deck. The one thing I didn't love about it was the fact that sometimes it felt a little bit like almost like we were competing with each other to like we had to worry about, oh, if I go before you, is that going to mess something up for you? Or if I use a move that pushes the enemy away, you're not going to be able to attack them then in that case. Some people might really love that because it definitely has more of a puzzly feel to it, the way that the quests carry out. You're trying to play each turn to figure out like kind of the best strategy. But I wish it was a little easier to help each other more, I guess, is kind of what I felt. And similarly with the loot, too. In the way that it's written, you don't share loot. It's whoever gets it, gets it. We kind of house ruled it ourselves to just split the loot because it just made more sense that way.
It also, a lot of times ended up, most times being like, you have 10 and I have 8, and you're like, you want to just make 9 and 9?
Right, yeah. So, or like I got 1 coin, you got 7. And I'm like, I wish I had money to buy an armor. But what did you think in general about this?
I do like the second partly because it made me think like I couldn't always just spam this one move if I wanted to. It made me had to think a bit more. But at the same time, and this is definitely more of a me thing. This sounds like a me problem. I'm not a hyper aggressive guy. I like to be the slower and collect everything. I'm the guy who's going to do all the goddamn side missions in a video game before they even start the second story mission. And that punishes you a lot in this game. Like, going for that 1 coin, it just felt so disappointing at times. Like, I want to get loot, but...
Yeah, if you're a completionist, this will probably not feel that good to you because you have to leave stuff behind or you're just going to run out of time. I will give them credit in the designs of the characters and classes. I felt are pretty unique. It doesn't feel just like, oh, I'm the dwarf, I'm the whatever.
No, you're the rat.
Yeah, I'm like a weird little rat mage. I'm not even sure what you are, to be honest.
I'm human.
You're a human
I am
scoundrel.
a human rogue, in essence.
Yeah.
I chose the most vanilla thing.
So, maybe there's a little bit in there, but overall, I thought that selection was pretty good. It sounds like we're being really negative, and I think part of that is necessary just because it's hard not to come at it that way to counter
I think,
that.
like I said, the problem is, I think, for this game isn't as much like when we say other games that are critical. It's really the hype, I think, is what hurt for me, and it sounds like for you the most. Yeah,
but I think that if you look at it in a vacuum, if you pretend you never heard about that stuff, and you were to sit down and play this game, you would be, you can't deny that it is a great game. I just think for me, it just doesn't do a lot that is really new in the world of tabletop gaming. It brings elements that I liked and does them very, very well. And now our crits and misses for Gloomhaven. Crits. The action selection method as you cycle through your deck of cards and abilities makes every quest feel like a puzzle that you have to solve.
It does make each decision count more, as well as not being able to spam the same move over and over, requiring you to maybe think a little bit more outside the box.
Each mission feels unique with new challenges and obstacles presented to you, different types of enemies, and more content even in between scenarios that you can discover the longer you play. With the class selection and level progression, the game gives you the feel of a role-playing game in the traditional style without needing to have a GM or do lots of prep.
That can be very helpful because sometimes it's sort of annoying when you have to spend hours before you even start playing a game.
And the game is extremely expansive. There is a huge amount of content to uncover that will keep you interested and keep you playing the campaign for a long time to come.
There's a reason why that box is so big. Misses, this did feel like we were just playing someone else's campaign in another RPG, and the story wasn't as great as we were hoping for. The action mechanic is interesting, but because you won't know what your own other players may do, let alone the enemies, your entire turn may become a whiff, which is extremely difficult since you are on a timer with your cards and can't just play until you get everything done.
I wish that the game encouraged cooperation between teammates a little better.
And finally, while we could try to view this in a vacuum, I do feel the fact that it was so hyped is a bit of a miss. Try to temper yourselves and you'll get a much better experience just by that alone. Gloomhaven is the quintessential campaign dungeon crawl game, allowing you to really build up characters and get that story that you would expect in any other RPG narrative. It was many people's #1 2017 game of the year. Would it have made up my top 10? Most certainly. #1? I don't think so.
I think that both our #1s were Seventh Continent last year, and I think Seventh Continent is almost the perfect antidote to this game in that it is almost entirely story-focused and narrative-focused and exploration-focused, whereas this is so combat-heavy. And I think for that reason, for both of our personal tastes probably, that game I think would still hold my #1. This definitely would have been in my top 10 when I played it, probably in my top 5, honestly. I do think, people will probably come away from this like, oh man, they hated Gloomhaven. At least for me, that's not the case. I definitely don't hate this. In fact, I think it's a great game that if you have the money and you have the group that wants to play it, you're guaranteed to get a ton of content and enjoyment out of the game. It just, like you said, you just got to temper your expectations if you're going into it after all this time. Especially, I feel like maybe it's different because we've played Descent, Mice and Mystics, Imperial Assault, these games that I kind of feel like we've had this experience before, just on a smaller scale. You know what I mean?
Yeah, actually, for me, always coming out from this, sort of similar, but it's I just want to go back to our D&D campaign, which we had to put down for a little while. And I will say, like, if you are in like college, for example, or you're all in a dorm room and within a stone's throw from each other, a literal stone's throw, then this is perfect.
Yeah, it's definitely, depending on what type of gamer you are, where you are in your life, who you know. If you're heavy into role-playing games, like you said, you might play this and be like, what's the big deal? I do this all the time. This is an RPG just with pieces. You know what I mean? So it's a bridging of two worlds. So, you might come down. Like for me, I'm kind of in both camps where I can see, obviously, this is a huge game with a lot of love that went into it and it's very well designed, but just maybe doesn't quite hit all the marks for me personally is all.
Oh, I think it really did come down to that. Like a lot of my misses, I think, are more of just a little bit more personal and just like, well, I just want to play this then instead. Because it does capture, because I love the RPG sense and I love rolling through, leveling up and sort of seeing that build. I mean, that's why I also like a lot of those video games that do that. But I feel it comes to a point, and the way I like the other RPGs where you can feel a bit more personal, that maybe this doesn't shine through as well with the two of us.
Yeah, hey, we're only human. We can't love them all, people. This will be our hot take, our controversial take for the rest of the year. We'll probably like everything else that everybody else likes.
I'm sure our subscription count will go down to 0 by the end of this week.
Yeah, so we'll lose all 2 of you. Hey, comment right now. You probably are already writing your responses to our thoughts. Tell us why you love Gloomhaven or why you don't, whether you agree with the things we said, what you don't agree with, alternatives, maybe just your favorite classes you like to play as, favorite scenarios you like. Just post spoilers in the comments.
Yeah, of course. Remember, because I think the new printing is coming out right around now, so
should be soon.
Do try to keep it a bit spoiler-free for people who may be just coming in here to decide whether they want to buy it or not.
Yeah, come on. Be a pal. Hey, until we see you all again in the streets of Gloomhaven, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this was a Roll for Crit review. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome board game content from Roll for Crit.
And please leave a comment. We're lonely.